All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Quarantine Virtual Summit. I'm Max. I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. Also with me are Kirkland Youth Council members who will be also participating in today's discussion. So while we're at home with our families, it can be hard to get rid of the stresses and uncertainty about the future. And to make matters worse, we're not able to see our friends, families, or trusted adults that support us every day. So the Kirkland Youth Council created the summit to get some of your questions answered, from sharing ideas on how to connect with friends or create your own personal space in your house, to exercise routines and how you can maintain physical health. We have a diverse panel of experts with us today that can reach into their personal and professional experience to address any of those worries or questions you might have. In addition to our panel, I would like to welcome Mayor Penny Sweet, who's going to share a message with us. The floor is yours, Mayor Sweet.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to start your summit this afternoon. And I'm happy to do so on behalf of the entire City Council. We are so proud of this organization and all of the work that you've done over the years. In this time of pandemic, it is so gratifying to be able to actually get something done. And Zoom is allowing us to do that. Besides using it for personal calls and just to stay connected with families, we've been able to do quite a little bit through the Zoom application. And then there's the phone. So Zoom rocks. I'm actually at my cabins in Eastern Washington right now. We drove over a couple of hours ago to get vegetables in the ground between Zoom meetings. Some of you may know my husband is a state legislator. So between the two of us, we have between 5 and 10 meetings on phones or Zooms a day. So we're on it a lot. He's at our winter cabin right now. I'm in our summer cabin. But on the way over here, this is what I wanted to tell you. At a snow park just outside of Fish Lake, we drove by 30, maybe 50, as many as 50 people clustered together on the side of the road in defiance of the governor's order, packing guns, protesting, and it made me sick. It really did. So I applaud the fact that you guys are going to the extremes that need to be gone to be able to communicate this way. I encourage you, I've got my own Zoom account so that I can call my son whenever I need to see him and chat with him. And it makes a whole lot of difference. That $15 for a month it's worth it. Anyway, I'm proud of you guys for doing this. Open up, chat, use this service in a way to support each other. There are a lot of fun things that you can do. I own an adult shop that is a wine shop. And my wine shop, we're having tastings. We have a game day on Saturdays. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So reach into your brains and share with us how we can do this better to support you. You guys have a good time today. I got a meeting at 4, so I'm going to sign off in just a few minutes. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sweet. If I could ask one thing of our amazing audience members and participants today, it would be to ask questions. So to ask a question, you can navigate to the bottom banner of your screen where there's a button titled Q&A. If you click that button, you can type in a question. Also, there should be a checkbox under the form where you can send questions anonymously. So if you choose to do that, you can also send anonymously. We have a great group of panelists with us today. I'd like to introduce them. So first is Heidi Bell, who works at Lake Washington Physical Therapy, and she's a track coach at Juanita High School. We have Michelle Brode from Youth Eastside Services. John Holman, he's the incoming LWSD superintendent. Christina Hunsberger, a counselor at Juanita High School. And Chase Stevens, also a counselor at Inglemoor High School. So without further ado, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves and then answer our first question. What is your biggest concern for youth and teens right now? So we'll start off with Heidi.
Hi, thanks for having me on the panel. I was excited to get to be a part of this. As you know, my name is Heidi Beal. I work at Lake Washington Physical Therapy in downtown Kirkland. I have a doctorate in physical therapy, along with a couple different certifications as an orthopedic specialist, and then a certified strength and conditioning coach too, along with coaching at Juanita High School for track and field. So it's kind of my background there. I think my biggest concern is making sure everybody stays active. Kind of goes with my profession, I suppose you could say, but doing it in a constructive manner, making sure you're getting out and walking and biking, but following all the set guidelines from the CDC and the state.
Thank you, Heidi. And so what is your biggest concern for youth and teens right now?
I would say in general for them too, I think it's easier for a lot of adults to access, well, I guess kids all have phones too, accessing adequate ways to stay active in a fun manner. Rather, walking and biking can get a little old, and it is pretty crowded on a lot of the trails around Kirkland. So finding different avenues, whether it's via Zoom or something, to interact with each other, but in an active way that's safe.
Thank you. And then next we have Michelle Brode from Youth Eastside Services.
Hi, so happy to be here with you guys today. So I just want to introduce myself and Youth Eastside Services. We are a community-based mental health agency based in Bellevue. We have offices in Kirkland and Redmond as well. And all of the Lake Washington middle schools and high schools have somebody from my team in the building to help provide mental health and substance abuse prevention and intervention. So I've spent the past several years in several different schools in Lake Washington, but Kirkland Middle School is where I spend most of my time before we closed. And just supporting students, parents, and staff in promoting well-being and addressing mental health and substance use challenges. In terms of my biggest concerns right now for teens, I would say they're twofold. One is to make room for the variety of experiences that you're having. So there may be some aspects of the closure that are working really well for you. There may be other aspects that are devastating. There are some kids who live with families that don't affirm their identities, or where there may be abuse and neglect going on. And so I just want to acknowledge that for each one of us, there are some potential upsides and some potential downsides, and that there is a chunk of our community for whom these downsides can be really significant. And I want to make sure that those teens and kids are being supported as fully as we can in these situations. The other thing I would say is just finding ways to stay connected to what helps you feel most alive. And I think when we're in the course of our normal lives, orchestra class makes me feel really alive, or being on the track team is something I absolutely love. And we don't have access to some of those things as easily these days. So I would say either finding what makes you feel most alive in these circumstances, or reconnecting to the things that kind of helped foster that before.
Thank you. Next would be Mr. Holman.
So yes, there is a doctor in front of my name at times, and my children always ask me, what can you do for us if you're a doctor? But my doctorate is not in medicine or physical therapy, or my doctorate was in educational leadership. So when I think of proud accomplishments, I think anyone that's crossed that hurdle of receiving a doctorate, it's almost like a badge of honor, because it means that you are able to sustain over a long period of time of focus and commitment to accomplishing a task. And so thank you for recognizing that. It's one of those things in my past that I could never go back and redo, but I sure am glad I went through it. But I am the incoming superintendent here in Lake Washington. Next year will be my 22nd year as an employee in Lake Washington School District. I actually started as a track coach at Redmond High School, and that was just as I finished my college track career. My brother's father-in-law was the principal at Redmond, and they needed someone to come and help out. And so I partnered with Dennis Villeneuve, the track coach at Redmond, who's been there for a number of years, and joined the district then. But I have had a tremendous career so far in Lake Washington. I student taught in the district. I was a teacher at Benjamin Rush Elementary, if any of you went there. I've been an assistant principal in the district, a principal in the district, and then I've served in a number of leadership positions in central administration. And over the last few years, I've served as both associate superintendent and deputy superintendent, serving our superintendents in their vision and leadership of the district. And our current superintendent, Dr. Jane Stavum, who some of you Kirkland Youth Council members know, she'll be transitioning to a little bit closer to home so she can be closer to her family in the South Dakota area. With that, met with the board, and they did determine to name me as their next superintendent. And so being with the district for this long, you kind of grow to love the area, the people, what we're about as a community. It's pretty amazing that we serve such vibrant communities, the city of Kirkland, the city of Redmond, the city of Sammamish. These are amazing places to live. We're a rapidly growing area. We just became the second largest school district in the state of Washington because of our rapid growth. But rapid growth is a wonderful thing because what it tells us is it's a place that people want to live. And when people are identifying a place to live, they want a place where they can earn a living. They want a place where they feel safe. And they want a place where their children will have an excellent experience in schools. And so we believe here in Lake Washington that we are a part of the community, that we're embedded with the community, and we really feel that all of the partnerships that we have are critically important to the success of our students. I'm a parent in the district. I live in the school district. I'm obviously an employee of the school district. My wife teaches in the school district. My sister-in-law teaches in the school district. So we're kind of a family business here. But really, I think what it boils down to is this just overarching commitment to providing the absolute best for our own children, but the children of our school district. We appreciate the fact that our neighboring districts of Bellevue, Issaquah, North Shore, Riverview are also excellent places for kids to learn. We're proud that our region really embraces education, and not just the academic parts of education. When you think about all of the different experiences that you have in your school district, whether you're in Lake Washington or North Shore or Issaquah, you really have opportunities to achieve greatness. And I think that's such a cool thing about our school districts and our region. I think about all of the different businesses that really highlight excellence in our region, that are really models for what we aspire to be, and allow us to provide opportunities for our students to have internships and opportunities for connection with community and business. It's just an amazing place to work, to live, to raise children. When I think about my greatest concern for youth during the COVID-19 crisis, to me, it's a very personal concern because, I have a daughter who's a junior in high school. She's full-time running start. She made that decision. And if you go to full-time running start, that's a decision to sort of disconnect from your high school in a way because you're pursuing an avenue that you've chosen. And so you're finding new relationships and making new meaning with new friends, making sure that you maintain connections back with your school. That's really challenging as a junior in high school. I also have a son who just started sixth grade this year. He's a middle school student. And when I think about my biggest concern, it's the loss of connection with peers. And everything that plays out when you have loss of connection with your peers, because that is really who you build your identity with, that is who you socialize with. And there's negative outcomes if we let those things slide. And so as a family, we've had to be really intentional about how do we ensure that we maintain those social connections, because that's extremely meaningful. As we think about also then transitioning back to school, at some point we keep crossing our fingers because we know establishment of community allows for positive mental health. It allows for positive future outlook. It allows for personal success. And those are all critical as we think about our well-rounded students that we want to be entering their post-secondary experiences prepared, grounded, and really ready to move forward in their lives. When I think about our younger students, I think about the academic gaps that unfortunately are going to be present when we all return to school, because learning to read in this environment is really, really tough. And so there's a lot of challenges, but I also look around at, experiences like this or other, video platforms where youth are posting and, positive messages. I see around Redmond where I live, there's all sorts of poster board signs, just encouraging people to remember that they're cared for, that they're loved, that they can do it, and all of those kinds of things are really important. So thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here, and Max, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Christina Hunsberger.
Hi guys, I'm a school counselor at Juanita High School. Most of you probably have a school counselor, so you know that we kind of service students under the overarching umbrella of total wellness, academic wellness, physical wellness, emotional wellness as well. So we are kind of that overarching umbrella. I would say my biggest concern for youth right now is kind of, I'm in the same boat as Michelle, their safety, their well-being. Also, I know my personal experience with self-isolation. It's hard. I want to make sure that you guys are doing okay. There's ups and downs, and sometimes we're having a hard time figuring out why we feel a certain way, and understanding it's okay to not know, and it's okay to not know what the future is going to be like, but we're all in it together.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, we have Chase Stevens.
Hey folks, my name's Chase Stevens. I'm a school counselor over at Inglemore High School in North Shore School District. I'm pretty much going to second everything that the other panelists have said so far. I've been a school counselor for 3 years at Inglemore. Previously, I was a biology teacher. And right now, my biggest concern for students, again, is wellness, making sure you folks are okay at home. But at the same time, I'm concerned about students losing direction, their sense of purpose, their motivation and traction with the goals and hopes they already had for themselves, and the loss of connection with peers as well as themselves. So I just really want to help y'all out.
Thank you. And as a reminder to all our audience members and participants, you can always submit questions in the question and answer, and then we're going to be answering your questions throughout the discussion. So I would like to officially open the question and answer. We're going to start with a question from a youth council member.
All right. Thank you, all the panel members, for coming today. And I know all of you kind of work in professions that are focused around helping others. And I really admire that. But I'm actually very curious about what are some of the challenges you've been facing personally, whether that is work-related or like home-related, and how have you been dealing with that? So anyone can answer.
I can step in and answer that. Thanks, Cheryl. It's a great question. I think kind of for starting off professionally, I have missed my students so much. We've been trying to connect with them over phone, over email. I think that is probably, not to sound corny, but probably the one thing that I've really had the hardest time with is working on all this stuff that's going to help my students, but not actually being able to connect with them like I would while in the building. Kind of on a personal level, I think, I've had a hard time not being able to give my parents a hug. Being an adult, I'm not in the same household as them, and that's actually really difficult for me. But I think on the kind of the upside, one thing that has been great is my friend group has been awesome about using Zoom to kind of hold weekly gatherings. We watch a movie every Thursday over Zoom. So I think socially things are pretty good as they can be. But I think I'm struggling a little bit more kind of professionally and personally, not having those connections with other human beings that I normally would.
Thank you.
I'll take a run at this one too. Personally, I think there's a couple of different things. One, Netflix isn't updating their movies as quickly as, I would hope that they would. So, kind of working through that. It's, when you think about, we're social beings, all of us, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you thrive on social interaction. And so, I have a wonderful family. We love each other, and we're spending a lot of time together lately. And when I think about, my wife and I, we love to go out. We love to go to dinner, get away from the kids a little bit. That's just not something we can do right now. And so it's either, go for a walk, take the dogs for a walk, but you can only do that, so many times, or if it's raining. And so it's just kind of that regular routine of life, readjusting to kind of this current normal. I won't call it the new normal because it's current and temporary. And at some point in time, we'll be able to do those things that we were used to doing. Professionally, it kind of is along that same theme. When I think about my work experience, I didn't realize how the social aspect of my work was so important. When I think about a big decision that has to get made and having people in the same room, my skill set is to be able to really understand the people in the room and understand the nuances of facial expression, a groan, a side look, and all of the kind of the unstated things people do when they are, thinking or disagreeing, or and so to come to decisions, it's actually taken a different skill set to try and make decisions as we're planning for next school year, as we're planning for our closure, all of that. And so, I really missed the opportunity just to be in the same room as people, to do our work collaboratively, work together. And I think Mayor Sweet mentioned, she has about 5 to 10 calls a day in this venue. I'm about the same, where it's just kind of back to back to back meetings in this format. And I get to the end of the day, and it's a different kind of mental drain because this is not a typical or natural way to interact with people. So that's some of the things I've been working through.
And I can jump into professionally and personally, I've been struggling, and I think students can relate as well, with the whiplash in my personal life as well as in my professional work life, just guidance coming from so many different people, so many different levels. And it seems like it's just constantly evolving, constantly changing. And I just want to say, I feel the whiplash, and I feel the group pain right now.
Yeah, I can jump in with this. I think my situation is a little bit different than all the other panelists, as I'm actually at work currently right now. Physical therapists are considered an essential workforce. We see patients that shouldn't be going to the doctors. And we kind of weed out who with a body injury should actually be coming in just to see us, to keep it a little bit safer. So with that being said, it's nice being at work, so I get a little bit of benefit. Personally, it's been a little bit harder. Just like everybody said, the isolation itself, I feel lucky in the sense of my husband works at home and I get to come to work every day. So that's a benefit, but we take lots of walks. Jumping back to professionally, I would say that jumping into all the CDC guidelines and everything, as everybody keeps seeing all these different things medically about what's the virus like, what is it causing, and what do we have to follow. And so that's been more of an impact for me professionally, because we've had to really stay on top of it, and you're constantly reading different things as it's coming out. So when you said you're used to seeing facial expressions, Dr. Holman, that's definitely part of it, because I wear a mask most of the day. I'm currently in the back away from people, so I'm not wearing a mask right now, but throughout my whole day, I have a face mask on. And so that's a little challenging in itself. You take for granted the eye contact that you actually need to give everybody before, where you could just watch someone's face with it. And I think the other thing is I miss coaching. It's really nice always to see the kids during the springtime and get to be involved with everybody's life and have that connection. And so that's definitely a detriment right now of not being able to do that and help people succeed with whether it's recreationally or they're very competitive at track. That's definitely a missing piece.
I'm happy to jump in here as well. My Wi-Fi dropped for a minute, so I missed something along the way. My apologies. I would say professionally, very much what others have said, just not having the contact with students and knowing that the level of need in terms of emotional support is as present, if not more so than it was while we were still physically in the building, is something that's on my mind a lot, and just wanting to find ways to be able to connect with students. And so I'm super grateful for forums like this, where we do have the opportunity to talk to you. And the other thing is just on the personal level, I feel like before the closure happened, I was in a really good routine, like with exercising and what I was eating. And I just had a lot of motivation and direction. And then once this started, I was like, okay, 2-week sprint. I'm going to be on top of things. And I had a plan and I worked the plan. And what are we in, like week 7 or 8 now? Like the motivation has just changed. And so, instead of seeing this as a sprint, taking it as a marathon and needing to kind of change my mindset to keep my motivation going has definitely been a challenge along the way.
I just want to piggyback on that. How can we stay motivated? How can we make sure that we're getting all the schoolwork, but also all of that physical fitness? Since we're not able to like walk around in school, we still need to get out. We don't want to stay home doing work all of the day. So how do we stay motivated with that?
I'm happy to start with this one, if that's okay with my fellow panelists. I think one of the things that is most helpful for motivation is just to figure out, why is this important to you? So if you can really focus on so your schoolwork before, maybe you were super motivated by grades. Maybe you were very motivated by not seeing teachers disappointed by what you were or weren't turning in or the quality of your work. Some of those things might look really different now. And so thinking about why does it matter to me if I get my schoolwork done? And, it may be that you want to have some foundational knowledge for the classes you're going to be in next year. It may be that staying intellectually engaged is part of what helps you not feel worse. And there are some things we need to do at this point, not necessarily because we will feel better if we do it, but that will keep us from feeling worse. Exercise is another one of those, right? We do not necessarily exercise because we want to feel better. There are lots of times in our lives that actually does work out really well. It has, in addition to the physical benefits, the mental health benefit. But I think in terms of things like physical activity right now, we've got to be on top of that so that we don't feel worse. Maintaining a schedule, sleeping. We do those things because we don't want to feel worse. We're in a really tough situation right now. And I think the motivation that we each find has to be what's important to me? Do I not want to feel worse? Do I want to have foundational knowledge I need? Do I want to stay connected with my friends? And so I think because the situation has shifted and our motivations that existed before might not exist in the same way now, that finding what really matters to you is what's most important and helpful right now.
Great. I would like to just piggyback off that too. I think also setting realistic goals. I'm also a swim coach, so I look at it as a swimmer saying, I'm going to swim a 500, but I've never swam before. You got to kind of break it down. How do you get there? Also celebrating the small victories. I think that's huge to start feeling successful and getting motivation and kind of getting that momentum going. And also, I really like kind of every day or every week, sometime writing things down so you can physically cross them off, especially if it's something that you really didn't want to do, but you did. You get to cross it out. It just, again, you get to visually see what you're getting done and feel that sense of accomplishment. Even if it's getting out of bed at a certain time, if you set the goal, I'm going to wake up at 7:30 today, and you did it, hey, that's a win for that day. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It could be taking a shower. Some of us are in a really hard place with our emotions and how we're feeling, and sometimes we just got to set the goal of just doing the little things to take care of ourselves to hopefully gain that momentum for the bigger things.
One thing with changes to grading policies, and Dr. Holman, you can, I guess, jump in here. How do you, with those changes, how do you think students should be able to motivate themselves to get all their schoolwork done so they're proficient and have a smooth transition to next year and whatever that holds?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this topic up. This hasn't had any controversy or discussion. We spent quite a bit of time analyzing the whole concept of how instruction is occurring, how we really grade during this time, and then the whole idea of not doing harm to students, because we already know there's enough pitfalls and opportunity for harm right now, and we didn't want to be just another thing that was damaging, harming students and their experiences and outcomes and potential futures. And so we spent a significant amount of time, and we really started with, well, let's just do a regular grading structure, A through F, and teachers will grade, their work, they'll assign grades. And as we continued to talk and evaluate it, when we thought about, marginalized populations, there are students who they have easy access to their teachers, they have easy access to their schooling for a number of reasons. Their house has high-speed internet, their house has multiple computers, they speak the same language as their teacher. They have a similar background to their teacher. And so, there's many reasons why some students are able to very easily access school. And there's other reasons why there's many students that same level of ease is just not there for many, many reasons. And so as we continue to talk about it and kind of peel back the layers of the onion, we continue to move towards the idea of maybe like a pass-fail option was one idea that we considered. And then we also have to consider the guidance and boundaries that we receive from the state. It's called the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. There's a superintendent who's in charge of, at the state level, his name's Superintendent Reichdahl. And so his office also thinks through these things. And they actually said you can't do a pass-fail option. And so that caused us to continue to think through where do we want to land. The two final options that we considered were either an AF, or an A or an incomplete option, or an AB and an incomplete. And if you're a Lake Washington student, we landed on the A or an incomplete as the grading option right now. And as we evaluated all of the different parts and pieces of this, we felt like that was the fairest for all students. It allowed teachers to teach, engage with students, help them kind of work through their learning without the idea or thinking that this is typical, because this instructional model is not typical. And all of your teachers had to change fundamentally what they do almost overnight to be able to provide learning experiences that even came close to what they're typically used to providing in the classroom. And so thinking about it that way, thinking about the long term, wanting to do no harm, as a district, we selected the A or incomplete option. And we're just working through right now, at what point would we assign an incomplete so that there's guidance for the entire district. And I know all of our surrounding districts are working through these same similar processes, because we also want, even in this grading methodology, we want it to be as equally applied as possible so that it's fair across the board. One of the things we knew going into this would be, well, if I already had an A, it's not fair. And we recognize the limitations of any kind of modified grading situation. And we know that this isn't typical for our teachers. It's not typical for their instruction, nor is it typical how they're accessing the standards that they teach the students. And so with that, that's why we landed on the A and incomplete. Chase, you may want to talk about North Shore. I think you landed on the A, B incomplete, and maybe talk about some of the rationale for that.
Yeah, correct. So in North Shore School District, like I was mentioning before, that whiplash, we went through the same kind of troubles with the state communicating to us that we had a certain set of options, and then they came back around and said, actually, those aren't going to be the options. So similar to what Lake Washington School District is doing, in North Shore, we're functioning off an A, B, and incomplete grading system with a lot of safeguards and safety nets in the fall and moving forward to catch students that might not be able to meet the standards that our district's creating right now. And it all in North Shore School District, and I'm sure in Lake Washington School District, it all is coming down to engagement. And how engagement's defined in your classes that are, utilizing this virtual learning system to earn that B or that A that goes on your transcript. And right now, North Shore is just releasing their newest iteration of their grading policy. So that's going to be coming to our families probably within the next few days. But my biggest message for students out there thinking about grading policies is to communicate with your teachers. All the teachers on your schedule are there to help you. Not one single teacher in our district, in your district, is looking to fail you or hold credit back from you. We really just don't want to provide any harm for families or students. We want to still provide educational options and opportunities for students to keep that engagement, build those foundations as they move towards their next grade level. But we, most of all, we just really want to make sure you folks are okay, and that we know what's going on with you.
So I know that some students may be actually motivated to participate in school because of grades. And so what do you propose for those students? How can they stay motivated in doing all their schoolwork if they're not going to get that option of, I guess, proving how good they're doing by seeing that A or the B plus or whatnot?
I can jump in. I know grades are really important to some students, and it's also a way to kind of show your effort that you've put in. Some people, say like, oh, well, I put in all this effort, so I, have this 4.0. I think kind of Michelle talked a little bit about shifting mindset. I think looking forward to understanding that education isn't just about grades, but it's about what you're learning and what you can carry with you to the future and apply that in your everyday life. So I think, it's going to be hard for some students to kind of set aside those grades, but looking at there's a much bigger picture when it comes to education and learning. And it doesn't stop when you graduate high school or college. So looking at what you are learning and what knowledge you're obtaining and how do you take that forward into the future and apply it to your everyday life and what you want to be doing in the future. I think that if you're able to shift that mindset, it'll help a lot.
And I'll jump in again. We also need to realize that, we are going to be returning to buildings at some point. Students are going to be returning to some resemblance of a normal school life at some point in the future. And most of our classes, build off of that previous knowledge. So we need to be shifting that mindset, thinking much more long-term for students and in your lives, thinking about, okay, if my end goal is that 4-year university, this specific career field, or this specific path afterwards, finding those Lego building pieces and figuring out, okay, I should put this effort or try and put this effort into that geometry class that you're struggling to be motivated in right now.
I would also say, I know that a lot of people are struggling with online learning. So if you know of a friend who maybe is struggling in math and you are just like rocking math, maybe reaching out and seeing if you can be of help. Because I think also too, the more we practice our knowledge, the more natural it comes. So I think even if you are reviewing stuff that you already know by teaching someone else, that's going to build your knowledge and make your foundation even stronger. So again, kind of not really relating to the grades, but that knowledge and learning piece.
Great, thank you. And of course, I want to remind our audience that your questions don't have to be about academics. They can be about everything, and then we'll eventually get to them.
Hi, I have a question. So on the line of thinking that a lot of schools will have the grading system with incomplete and A, how do you think the colleges will look at that, or how will they shift or adjust to that type of change occurring right now?
I'll take a run at this, and then maybe our counselors can jump in on this one. They probably know the level of detail more than I do. But what I do know, we're hearing higher ed also talk about understanding this period of time in terms of grades and things like that. But we also know that higher ed institutions, colleges, and universities, they look at more than just a GPA. They look for a whole person that they're bringing into their school, because they know that as students transition from high school to college, if you're choosing to go to a 4-year university and live on campus, academics is just one piece of success indicators. Are you able to manage time solely on your own? Are you able to organize your life so that you're paying bills, that you're, making sure you're eating well, that you're exercising, that, your mental health, that you're able to either reach out if you need help or kind of maintain, a positive outlook? Because one of the worst things for a college to do is to evaluate a student to come into their school who's then in 6 months or a year going to fail and drop out. And so they're looking for a whole student to bring in, not just academics. And I think that's the do no harm part of the grading system. Is this gives everybody an opportunity as far as grades to have no harm moving forward. And so there's a lot of personal work that needs to go on right now and those kinds of things. And as you're thinking about, moving into applying for college and going to college, you at least have one thing, that my academics are solid because I engaged, I participated, and I have the GPA to support the different schools I'm looking at. And I have all of these other different pieces that are evidence that I'll be successful in school.
That's a great answer, Dr. Holman. I think another thing to keep in mind is that, and not to sound scary, but this is a global pandemic. The whole world is experiencing some sort of effect from COVID. All across the country, schools have been shut down. AP testing has been moved to different methods. SATs have been shut down for a while. So in regards to getting into college or applying to college, just know that Washington State, Kirkland is not the only place experiencing this and the only place that's going to have a weird looking transcript. In our conversations with colleges and communication with them, they have been super understanding. And before we've even asked questions, they've really pushed out a lot of information of what applications in the future are going to look like and what allowances they're going to make, knowing that everyone is really in the same boat right now.
And to kind of jump in as well, I'm going to second everything Dr. Holman and Christina you've said. And just so that everybody in the audience knows, we don't have all the answers, and it's still going to continue to evolve, and we're going to get different guidance from our local universities, our national universities, and international colleges and universities. I'm sure, Christina, in your email, you probably get about 60 new emails a day from universities and colleges announcing their updates for admissions in the fall. And then, we're getting second updates, third updates. So I'd encourage everybody in the audience, no matter what grade you're in, if you're, thinking about applying to colleges in the fall, or if you're a freshman listening in on the webinar, to go to some of those dream schools or schools that you've thought of and just sign up for their information news blasts, because they're not only helpful, but just like you were saying, Christina, they come across like they care and they're thinking about you guys.
And Chase, I don't know if you guys have a career and college resource center. I know we do at Juanita, and our employee who's in charge of that, Ms. Phillips, she is phenomenal. And she has been on the phone, emailing with all the colleges and updating us also. So I would say too, if you're really concerned and have a lot of questions, reach out to your college and career center at your school, because those individuals are super, super knowledgeable about not just college, but apprenticeship programs. If you had, a volunteer opportunity lined up next year, but it fell through because of this, kind of what your alternatives could be. And also financial aid, they have a lot of information on that as well. So make sure, you look at all your resources in regards to post-high school.
Max, could we hear from Heidi and Michelle in terms of kind of the health and wellness preparation for college? Because I would imagine if I'm a senior and then I'm going to college next year, there are health and wellness items that I need to be paying attention to right now in preparation for that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm happy to take this. In some ways, it's a little, there's one aspect of your question that feels challenging, which is that we don't exactly know what college is going to look like in the fall, right? So I think I'm going to take an answer at it from the world that we have known in terms of how people who are moving on to the next phase of their lives can best support their own well-being. So I think a couple of the key things are just knowing, like I was saying before, what helps you feel most alive and connected, and knowing that when we go through transitions, whether it's finishing high school and starting at a 2-year college, or finishing high school and starting at a 4-year, or finishing high school and starting at a career at a job, that times of transition are always hard. The things that we are used to aren't there anymore. And the things that are going to support us and that are going to be there aren't quite in place yet. I'd imagine all of us on this call can relate to this in some degree or another, because we are in a time of transition now globally. But I think things like knowing what does it take, or getting more familiar with what does it take for me to feel at my best. So am I somebody who needs a lot of downtime? Am I somebody who's really social? Am I somebody whose thoughts tend to head into a lot of worrying in ways that drag me down? Am I somebody who needs a certain amount of exercise to really feel at my best? Like what are your preferences? Just what are your set points? And knowing that these times of transition, particularly between high school and whatever is next, are really challenging, and that if you are having a hard time, that there are resources out there for you. So some of those resources are going to be the same ones that actually exist right now. So things like crisis text line are available to you right now. You can text actually any word you want to 741-741, and you'll be connected with a trained crisis counselor. I used to be one of them. People always ask, is that actually just a computer? But no, there are real people there. So that's a resource that's available to you now. That's a resource that will be available to you when you're done with this phase of your education. Every college and university has a counseling center on it, and just knowing that you can reach out to them and ask for support. Connecting with any adult that you trust, who you think will be supportive and be there for you, is a really helpful way to figure out, what are my resources internally, right? What are my own strengths? What are the ways in which I am resilient? And also, what external resources are available to me? Because everybody goes through hard times. and just being gracious enough with yourself to say, just because I'm struggling doesn't mean I don't belong here. Just because I'm struggling doesn't mean there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Everybody goes through times of struggle and of doubting themselves and of feeling kind of off balance. And know that you both internally have the resources to get through hard things. You have done it before, and that externally there are resources available to help you, and to just try to find somebody who can help connect you to those.
I'll jump in a little bit on that. I would agree with everything Michelle said. She said it very eloquently. So I'll kind of jump on just to finding those routes that she mentioned externally, especially if you're going to college and say you're used to, if you're on a sports team or if you've been part of clubs and it's very scheduled in your life, you sometimes start to flounder, not knowing what to do. How do I get this in? Because now I slept to 10 because I don't have a class till 11, starting to set boundaries for yourself probably, and starting to look at, okay, how do I like to be physically active? Is it just taking a walk, or do I like to be part of teams? Maybe I'm not playing a college sport, but there's a lot of different intramural teams from all different levels, whether it's just that fun get together with people and you play kickball, or you're a little bit more competitive. There's club teams for colleges, and that's if we're all on campus at this point next fall. So hopefully, fingers crossed with that. But if not, and you're at home and you're actually doing online again, I think starting to connect with friends, whether they're the new friends at school or they're old friends at home, and finding that buddy system and trying to figure out, does it help me to have another person hold me accountable as I go through? And whether it's I'm going to go for a run, will you text me when you're done? Or you go on a phone call and it's an easy jog and you can talk on it. Just finding different methods to utilize, whether it's through that connection via Zoom or phone call, or getting together person to person if that's at that stage of life with all spaces going on, to help you maintain not only like that mental health, mental wellness that they talked about, but also that physical portion, which will allow you to concentrate better in school, or just taking those study breaks. And your study break means you're going to go out for a walk. That's, I think, the hardest thing, especially even as I see college students in the clinic, is getting them to get up and move. They know they should. Everybody knows they should. But it's actually saying, okay, I have a timer set on my phone. And that's a lot of the cues I give even adults, is set something up that causes a friction in your daily schedule to make you think, oh, I should get up and go do something to move my body and get myself moving, which actually improves your attention span and your attention to task as you go.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on that? How would a student who would normally have track and field, for instance, and that's how they would get their kind of social time, but also their time to exercise and kind of get that energy out, how would that student be able to maintain physical activity and I guess schedule a time or routine? In your experience, how do you kind of get that happening?
Lots of times sometimes it's joining a club. So right now there's a ton of virtual runs going on. And so it allows you to have that social interaction via whatever, Instagram, TikTok, any of the different social medias that anybody's participating in. And you can say, there's one that came out actually on athletics.com, which people have access to. And so it goes through and you run a mile every week, and it's a different type of mile. So it's a crazy mile. You can either run funny or you can dress funny, different things, and you can post a recording of yourself doing it. So that's one avenue to go about it, to kind of get yourself going. If you're in person and we actually get to be on campus, whether it's in college or in high school, sometimes it's the clubs that happen. So there's always, usually most towns, there's some type of running club. So if we're going back to like track and field, there's usually some running club and someone organizes it and tells you a time to be there, a day to be there. And they tell you how far you're running, and then they have different groups. They have a faster group, a slower group, maybe a walk jog group, because maybe you're not in the best of shape and you need to take it a little bit easy, or you just enjoy doing it that way. That's another way of doing it. A couple other avenues would be, I know I watch more Instagram when I have a chance, and it's only because I get to watch videos of other people doing exercises. So it's kind of the nerd in me biomechanically. But when you actually go into it, there's a lot of great people out there. There's a lot of horrible ones when you watch them do a push-up and it looks terrible. But that lead a really concise exercise group. So like Fly Fitness for Kirkland, they host one on Zoom, and you can hook into it. Everybody sees Peloton. I mean, there's just a lot of different avenues to hooking into their digital system and doing it virtually. And that's how I would start to do it and start to set that schedule. They have virtual online ones that are live, and you can go on at 6:30 and you're part of a whole group of people that are doing it somewhere across the nation or within your town.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi. So that was a good overview of how you can connect to virtually for physical activities. What are like some other ways that students can connect to virtual platforms so that they can continue to experience, at least to some capacity, those clubs or school activities or extracurricular activities that they are missing out on right now?
I would say definitely platforms like Zoom are great for just any type of connection. And whether that's like you're a captain of the swim team, I know I've had a couple of my captains ask, hey, like, how can we like get a team meeting going or things like that. I think just having that connection can be great. Also, set like a standing appointment with a friend or with a group that really will put something on your calendar to stay connected, and you can change it up. Like I was saying, I have a standing meeting every Thursday with my friend group of watching a bad movie together. You can change that to, watching a good movie or all going out on a walk and FaceTiming together. So I think, especially high schoolers and middle schoolers, you guys are super creative. We're pulling from old ideas. You guys are younger and probably have some way better ideas of how to liven things up, stay connected. But I would say definitely using platforms. One thing I've really liked to use is Marco Polo. I don't know if you guys use that at all, but it's super great because you can have that face-to-face visual, but you're not putting someone on the spot to spend their time right now to talk to you. So one of my best friends is in Chicago. So we've been Marco Poloing this whole time because we're on the time difference. But it's been a great way to stay connected, but also kind of rekindle a friendship that we didn't really have time for pre-pandemic.
I think Marco Polo is one of the coolest apps ever. Another really great app that our student clubs are using, I know our gender sexuality club is really engaged with using Discord as an app. And it's similar to Zoom, but it's also a great way if you have a larger group of students that you really want to try and organize or connect with, you can create different channels and different ways to talk about different things in one time session. So whereas Zoom is, all at once, Discord splits it up into topics, which is really cool and exciting for kiddos.
What about some of the events that are not able to take place because either they're canceled or, mostly because they're canceled? So how do students and youth deal with the disappointment or grief that can come from missing those opportunities to engage with others or the experiences? It could be from like a summer camp. How do the youth deal with that kind of missing out or grief that comes from event cancellations?
I'm happy to take this one. Again, my Wi-Fi is very unstable this afternoon, and I was gone for a few minutes, and now I'm back. So I think I caught the end of your question. So I think that this is one of those places where really acknowledging what we're missing out on and what we've lost is really important. And it is unpleasant to feel feelings that don't feel good, but they also don't go away just by ignoring them. And so there's an extent to which we just have to honor that, like, some things are really hard and that we really have lost stuff that's very important to us, whether it's prom or graduation or camp or a trip or being in a play or, whatever. Everybody's got a huge list of things that they're missing out on. I will acknowledge there are some people who are feeling a sense of relief about not needing to do things that they might not be needing to do now. But in general, like, it's really important to recognize the feelings that go along with it and to be kind to yourself, knowing that, like, this is a normal response to a really abnormal situation, and to allow yourself to feel those feelings. There's a term we use all the time, which is kind of name it to tame it. And so sometimes when we're feeling really out of sorts, like, if we can just say, like, oh, I'm really annoyed about that interaction, or, oh, I'm feeling really stressed about this assignment I have to turn in, or, wow, I'm super disappointed that camp was canceled this summer. Sometimes just being able to say what it was and how you felt is important. And then just make space to feel those feelings and not get stuck in them. And so it's like, how do you bridge that connection between this is the reality of where I am, and I'm not going to let myself get stuck in it. So I personally, the camp that my kids go to, I was actually invited to come spend a week at camp this summer. So I was going to get to go to summer camp this year for the first time since I was, 14. And so I'm super disappointed that I don't get to go to camp. But when I look at it as, I'm really bummed, like, that was a huge opportunity that I was really looking forward to. And I know that this is being done to protect other people. They actually could have opened camp, but people probably would have died. So I'm willing to say, like, I'm super sad about that. I'm really disappointed. And I know that it is for some greater good. So I think the extent to which we can find some other aspect of it that doesn't diminish the disappointment or sadness we feel, but that just acknowledges there's a bigger picture beyond just our disappointment around it.
I totally agree with everything Michelle just said. I think also too, in your own way, like, figure out kind of what you can do as an alternative. I've kind of been going through that as well. I realized over the weekend, like, I'm not going to be able to give my seniors their diplomas and, like, give them hugs like I always do. So, like, I got really down. I was really sad about that. So I was thinking, okay, we still have a month until the end of school. What is something that I can start doing now to maybe, it's not going to be the same, but kind of as an alternative, whether that's writing handwritten letters to their house, calling them, trying to come up with some alternative that may take some of that sting away. Obviously, this situation sucks, but what can we do? What's within our power to kind of take a little bit of that sting away, even if it's, something small?
I think one thing in my household, it's been understanding what is it that each of us are personally feeling about the loss of a situation. So when you think about, if we take graduation, there may be a student who they're feeling disappointed because they wanted to walk across the stage. Like, the idea of walking across the stage was a huge deal to them, and they had reasons why. Another student might feel the loss of graduation because it was the community aspect of being together with my friends at the end of this great accomplishment. My 6th grade son would have been in his last year of Little League, and he was certain they were going to win the Little League World Series this year. Like, he knew it, that this was, they were going and they were going to win. It's disappointing not to have a Little League season. It was disappointing as a dad for him not to have a Little League season because, you go through all of the struggles in sports to get better and, work through your fears and all of that. And then kind of this moment that you've really been focused on that last year, it's on ESPN, and would they have made it? Probably not. But that's not the point. It's just a disappointment of not even being able to try. And so he's also passionate about throwing the javelin. And so we've kind of refocused our energy around, we're going to throw as much as we can. We're going to get better at that because there's summer meets that are probably going to happen. And so just kind of refocusing, like both Michelle and Christina said, whatever that energy is that you have, whatever that drive is, just find where you can kind of have an outlet for that, because that's a very natural human response, is to want to accomplish, want to do what you love. And so finding that pathway towards that is really important. But I think it's also understanding, why am I disappointed about whatever my loss was? And how do I fill that with maybe a replacement activity or behavior?
Thank you. We have a question from the audience. A council member has a question. And so we'll be hearing from them.
Hello. So on the same thread of kind of seniors and recognition, I think the big question on everyone's mind is there anything that will change permanently in terms of high school and college? This could be on, the topic of high school athletics, the programs that we run at high school, like the counseling program, and just everything in general, really.
What I can tell you is we've definitely had the conversation of, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know, what vaccines are going to look like. We don't know what immunity is going to look like. And I think a lot of it is dependent on that. And that's really, really hard because that's kind of out of our control right now. But we have had conversations. I know that as a coach, I know the whole state is having conversations daily about what at least fall athletics is going to look like. I know as a counselor, we're trying to come up with ways to connect with our students. It's been a little challenging, but, over phone, hopefully more video conferencing, things like that. I mean, there is going to be somewhat of a new normal for a while, just because I think there's so much unknown with what's going on with COVID. But I think just to reassure you, that conversation is happening, at least within Lake Washington School District. I'll let Chase kind of speak more to the Inglemoor area, but I know basically every time there's a staff meeting, there's a department meeting, that is the conversation of what are we doing now, but also what can we do to ensure these programs to move forward in the future?
Yep, it's pretty much the same in North Shore. We don't really know what the future 100% is going to look like. I think we can all pretty much agree that there's going to be a new definition of normal moving forward, and educational impacts will be long lasting because it's affected everybody worldwide, K through higher ed. But a silver lining to possibly think about is how many innovative and creative solutions to things we're going to start seeing pop up, and how many different options we're going to start seeing, or hopefully start seeing in the future, because of this long-term world situation.
I want to just...
Max, can I just briefly jump in there? I feel like it's a pretty, of all the topics, this is one of the most important, because I think it's the responsibility of all of the adults that support youth and kids to think about how we do our work, how we do our jobs, and how we support our youth. And this is a great time to reflect on what was and how do we make things better in the future. And so I don't have a specific thing, because we're talking about all sorts of different things. I know that our work has been, we employ over 4,000 people in Lake Washington School District. And the intercollaboration between our employee groups to support students in very, very meaningful ways has been tremendous. And so when I think about, moving forward, what are some of the changes? Making sure that we maintain some of these connections and opportunities that we've established as adults to work together. I think that just leads to better outcomes for kids. It creates a better environment for kids. And what did we learn from this situation to help us in the future?
I just want to pivot slightly to, with a lot of the future being uncertain, we're getting a lot of mixed messages of what we should be doing for exercise, or even when getting information maybe from teachers. So how do you think that what do you think is the best way for students to kind of parse all that out and kind of figure out, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is what someone who an authoritative source is telling me to do, and so I should kind of take that recommendation?
You can take that on a health note to start with. What I would recommend for any student and any adult period would be, as you start to hear the conflicting messages that you hear from different sides of government or even state, and then you come down to the health professionals themselves, is just get yourself to read several different sources. Don't just read one source, but also come back to looking at the World Health Organization and the CDC recommendations. This is an evolving situation, and so as they learn more and more, and we see it longer and longer, those recommendations are going to start to change, and not to get hung up on the change that occurs, but to kind of accept it and look at kind of both sides of either story that you're hearing from different authorities with it, and make an educated decision of, okay, now what should I read next to help kind of supplement what I just heard. But I think taking something as verbatim and not from just a verbal source isn't as useful or thought-provoking. I think actually doing a little bit of that searching yourselves will help not only make you feel more comfortable with what they're telling you, but also make you a little more aware of the situation that you're listening to or hearing.
I think also from like a school standpoint, I think as human beings right now, I think, and always, we all have our own experiences, our own situations that can weigh heavily on how we engage and how we do our work. I think my best advice is just making sure that there is an adult at your school that you can communicate with. And even if it's not, maybe you're struggling in science and don't quite feel comfortable talking to your science teacher about why you're struggling or what you're struggling with, but there's maybe a counselor or maybe even your English teacher that you feel really comfortable talking with. I would say just make sure there's some type of communication because, science teacher could be telling you got to get these things done, but if they knew kind of what you're going through, they may say, okay, like I totally get that you did not turn in last week's stuff. Like, why don't you just do this 1-page summary so I know that you're kind of learning the standards. There's a lot of flexibility with our teachers, but unfortunately adults aren't mind readers. I wish we were. It'd make our jobs so much easier. But I would say the more that you're comfortable communicating with all your teachers or just one trusted adult, I think the better you can be and kind of the better off you can be, and also just the more support you can have.
And to piggyback on that, in the school situation, I mean, students, you guys are all getting hundreds of emails every week. And it's just a spaghetti mess of whiplash trying to figure out what to read and what to care about and what to kind of move on to the next thing. So my biggest guidance for each of you is, if you don't have that organizational capability to figure out, step A, B, C, D, shoot that email to the teacher and just say, what's going on? Where am I at? And start there.
And just one last thing, we aren't striving for perfection. Perfection is kind of this lofty goal out there that I think rarely anyone ever can be. So I think just, focusing in on like what you can do and what is going to be the best for you to do. And again, if that's having to pull a ripcord and saying, I can't do this assignment this week, I can't physically, I can't mentally, that's okay. Just make sure that you're communicating with someone about that so you can have an advocate as well.
As we're nearing the end of our discussion, unfortunately, I wanted to get to some audience questions. So someone from the audience asks, how can students who come from a private school or different district make sure that if or when they transition to like Washington School District, they're able to meet the standards since different districts have different grading policies?
Coming from kind of like a counselor standpoint on that, I would say I know that we've had conversations with our teachers already kind of going into next year about how everyone is kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak, and how there may have to be some more work done next year to kind of fill in those gaps from this time kind of on COVID lockdown. So I would say don't be too stressed out about it. Communicate with your counselor at whatever school you're transferring into. Give them the most information that you can, and talk to them. Talk to them when school's back in session about if you're struggling or if you think you're, misplaced in a class. Because I think the best thing you can do is communicate and share your experience so that you can have an advocate at your school.
I would say the other thing, Max, before we move on, is to make connections. Find peers, find groups, whether it's a club, an activity, a sport, whatever it is, find a connection point at your new school, because that's what's going to help you get through the challenges. Because transition is hard enough. Transitioning during high school is it just presents different challenges, and so making sure you're connected with both peers and adults in your new school is going to help you kind of get through the challenges.
Heidi, this next question's mostly for you. I know that we've seen on the internet the home workouts have just been going crazy. Everyone's posting about home workouts, but workouts outside of the home, what is your guidance for walking or running or biking while staying safe, and also how you've been doing that when you've been working?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest thing is when you're looking, where should I go walk? Where should I run? Where should I bike? Kind of take a look at the timing of the day, since you guys all have different things going on now. You're not just sitting in a classroom. So that can kind of change your access to different times of when to go for that walk or run or bike. Picking times where they're less crowded is optimal. Taking different routes than what you used to take, as long as it's obviously safe for you to go out at that time. Either going a little bit earlier in the morning, as long as your parents and you are comfortable with that, or even going a little bit later so it's not quite as busy out there as you go. They're not recommending per se to wear any face masks at this time, even for King County when you're actually walking, biking, or running, but they are recommending maintaining that social distancing, which is hard when you're, say, on the cross-Kirkland corridor or something like that. So that's why you're picking those optimal times will help keep you safe and maximize that social distancing that you're trying to do with it. I would say on my side of things of how I've gone about it, I've been taking different routes when I go for runs, trying to avoid the really crowded areas. I like to hike. I haven't really done any hiking recently because everybody went outside and really got on the trails close by and it became super crowded. So if you're with your family and they like to do those type of activities, or going forth as we move into the different phases, you have your select group or kind of your pod of people that you're allowed to see. Maybe finding out, can you go a little bit further as long as someone's with you? Driving access and everything obviously is part of the equation, I realize. And getting out into those little bit more remote areas so that you can still really enjoy being outside, but also being safe and maintaining that social distancing with it. I guess I didn't really address the home workouts with it, but I would also just kind of, there are a lot of terrible home workouts out there right now too, as a lot of fitness professionals that are kind of top in the industry or sometimes jokingly make a little fun of it. But I think the easiest thing that you can do is if you are in sports or you have someone you want to talk to, a lot of the physical therapy places are open, which I would say we're the specialists in movement is how I would put it. You can always shoot an email. A lot of us are doing consults, and we can do that for kids. They're free. At least at our clinic, we're doing telehealth consults, like 20 minutes, and you can ask us questions or you can show us different exercises is kind of the idea of it, to try and keep people healthy and moving. But I would definitely kind of pick and choose who you go to. And you can even, like Christina, who is the swim coach and stuff, I'm sure she knows and sees different things out there too, along with everybody else, picking someone that actually knows what they're talking about. And that's sometimes it's hard. So you can Google them and see what's their background. Do they actually do a little bit more and understand what they're telling you to do? And can they actually do a good position when they're doing it?
What should we look for when we're looking for those sources for either fitness routines or whatnot? What should we look for in a person who's offering that service?
Yeah, I like a lot of physical therapists are doing a bunch that they're offering out there. And so not that they're always the best at movements either by any means, but I would say they have probably the best understanding looking at movement with it. But I would look at their credentials kind of behind their names, or if you look them up, what have they done in the past? Are they someone that, and this is no offense to philosophy, but say has a philosophy degree and then decided I'm just going to be a personal trainer without really doing much else other than a weekend course? So seeing, do they have a background, maybe like an exercise science, or they do have a strength and conditioning certification, or they've been a coach for many years and taken a lot of different courses with it. I would also look at who are they trying to go to? Are they trying just to do something fast and furious? Or are they telling you different cues while you're watching it? Make sure your knees don't come together when you do a squat. That's the easiest thing that people always hear. Or make sure that you're not bending over all the way, letting your chest go to the ground. Just different cues they're willing to kind of throw out there to you, even though they can't see you, that help you look in a mirror or watch yourself in the window or something that can help you make sure you're doing the right movement so you don't get hurt with it too. And then them also offering modifications for you. So say you can't do a full push-up, which is perfectly fine. Well, what else should I do instead? And they're saying, okay, maybe go to a table and I'm going to do a push-up with my hands on the table instead, or I'm going to drop to my knees. Those would be the things I would look for. Even if you're like, I don't want to research them at all or Google them, look for what they say in the video. It's giving modifications and giving you options of how to improve what you're doing. That would be the two key things.
Can I also just jump in really quick? Also, too, I'm pretty sure almost all high school students have had a PE class. You can reach out to your PE teachers, too, even if you're not currently one of their students. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. We have Ms. Parker, who's our walking and yoga teacher, and I know that she loves to hear from all of her students. I'll even talk to her about yoga. So I think, too, if talking to maybe an adult that you don't know is a little intimidating, just know that you can always reach out to the PE departments too at your school, because they might come up with some good ideas as well.
Thank you. And as we're wrapping up, I would like to ask our panelists one final question, and each of you can have an opportunity to answer this. If you can give one piece of advice to youth right now, what would it be?
I'd be willing to start with that. I think the strongest piece of advice that I would give to youth right now, and honestly, I'm giving it to your parents every chance I get as well, is just to really prioritize your emotional well-being. That's going to encompass so many other things. Your academics can be part of that. Your, strength training workouts can be part of that. Your nutrition can be part of that. But just looking at what brings you a sense of connectedness and meaning and purpose? What do you need to do to keep yourself feeling as well as you can be feeling? We haven't really talked a lot about social connection, unless it happened during the few minutes when my internet went down. But it's hugely important that you're connecting with people that you love and who love you. And so, finding ways to have those social connections. I did also want to say that I am going to be offering a group, anybody who is on the call, we can send out information, but I'm going to be offering a group about supporting well-being during the COVID closure. And that'll be on Tuesdays at 4:00 through Zoom. And I'm pretty sure that the Youth Council will be able to send out an email to the people who have registered for this. But I'm just, I've found a wonderful resource that I have used in other locations, and they have adapted their program for the closure, and it is spectacular. I wish I could have every student and every parent be part of this group. So you are invited, and it's just really about promoting your own emotional being during this time.
I want to jump in and just say, all adults really want the best for the youth here. And whatever you guys can be doing to find some type of joy and excitement every day that you wake up. I mean, that's something that I'm trying to focus on.
I would also say I've had some conversations with students and realizing there's some double isolation going on. Obviously, we're all isolating in our home, but also a lot of high school students are just kind of isolated to their room. They're studying in their room, they're doing workouts in their room, they're on their phone in their room. And that can be a lot. I would say, figure out a place in your house that it can be just for you, where you're not doing all your work, where you're not watching TV, where even if it's a closet, I've locked myself in a closet a couple times as self-isolation just to get some solitude. And that sounds weird while being in isolation that we may need solitude, but, sometimes households are crazy, houses are small, and sometimes we just need our own time. So I would say, really prioritize what you need during this time, even if that's locking yourself in a closet for a couple minutes a day.
I would add in there is just trying to get outside in some manner, because we're all sitting in our rooms. And so I think kind of also playing with from the closet to the outdoors, getting both of them is really important, I think, for both, not only your physical portion, which I talked about more, but definitely the mental aspect of it. Just being outside can give you a little bit of that breathing room, whether it's from siblings or maybe a little bit from parents. It can all kind of come together and keep everybody sane and happy, and you can kind of take the joy of being outside your house.
I'll tag on to what Heidi just said. The word that comes to mind for me is joy. Is find joy in something. Find something positive that you can think about. Find something positive that you can talk about. Write down positive statements about the people you know, your friends, because we all are going through this really emotional time. And it's like nothing we've ever experienced before. And so we almost have to force ourselves to get out of that mindset and force ourselves into a mindset of positivity, remind ourselves that we do have positive things in our life that we can be joyful about. You can do that with your family. You can do that with your friends, because everyone around you needs that as well. And so to me, it's just finding the joy in the little things, the big things, thinking about, positive statements in your mind that helps you kind of get back on track, knowing that we're all kind of on this roller coaster right now of frustration and anger and, sadness but continuing to go back to a positive place is really, really important, and helping those around you do that same thing is important.
Thank you very much for your responses. And I'd like to thank all of our amazing panelists today for joining us, and Chris Appel, who's off screen over there, for helping us set up the webinar. I'd also like to thank our audience and the Kirkland Youth Council members for asking great questions. A video of the summit will be available later, so make sure you check back to the city website, and there'll be information on where that'll be posted. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists. I thought this was a great discussion. We talked about everything from mental health to academics. So thank you very much.
Great job, Max.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.